civil society is really growing despite all pressure. And for me, repression is vice versa. It's reaction of the state on this trend. And it means for me that civil society is so strong already that the state can't just ignore it. OVD-Info, it is a human rights media project established 10 years ago. Our aim is to fight this political repression in Russia, and first of all with freedom of assembly. We're working like news agency to collect and verify information about what's going on in this field in Russia and spread this information widely. And also we provide legal assistance to people detained on mass protests and arrested after. And then we're doing a lot of analytical job, like doing reports, advocacy, since we do understand that we can change something only in the future, but if we will not start today with real human rights job right now, we won't success. And if we will not prepare these reforms already now, by collecting data and analyzing data and understanding why the situation looks like that, we all also will not succeed. Right for now, it's still like a bureaucracy moment mostly. We should label our production, we should write reports to Minister of Justice, and we started this court trial with Minister of Justice on our including. It's mostly like that. But in general, it's like black label, which means that any state bodies may attack us, and I suppose that they will, in short run, do something else. First of all, they may label our members of our team as a foreign agents in already individual one, and it's much more tough. It's really tough, and it may influence like our efficiency, since we can host some volunteers, maybe some lawyers in regions, and maybe our media coverage will decline, since media also should label any information provided by a foreign agent, also to label by this organization has been labeled as foreign agents, and if they will not do it, they will be fined. So some media will be, I suppose, will prefer and even just don't use this information. Under COVID restrictions, everything is prohibited. Mostly in all regions, you just can't arrange any protests. And even single pickets, one-man pickets, it can't be prohibited by law, by constitution, but still police is detaining people who are practicing even single pickets in Moscow. So for now, it's like very tough time for this, but people already for a couple of years don't really pay attention to legislation. If they want to protest, they're doing it, like it was in Khabarovsk, where it was like mass protests during last summer, and like it was in the whole Russia when Navalny was arrested. If people really want to protest, they will do it. But of course, then they will be detained, beaten, arrested, fined, etc. Last really huge protest was in support of Alexei Navalny when he arrived in Moscow and had been arrested. But it's important to understand that they are protesting not only because they do like Alexei, but also because they do feel that there is no hope. It's not because of economics, it's not because of, I don't know, specific political issues. It's just atmosphere, and people do understand that there is no hope if something won't really change in the future. And I do know by sociology polls on the streets that on these demonstrations last winter, it was mostly people who participated protests first time. They were something like between 25 and 35. It was more or less 50-50 men and women. They are usually quite well educated, but it's not only like middle class, it's different part of societies. People who are frustrated with our past, where Russia is going on. And then, of course, in different cities, again, it's different triggers to protest. Like in Ingushetia, it was one issue. In Khabarovsk, it was because of arrest of the governor who they elected, etc., etc. So very different triggers. In general, we see that law enforcement is also changing to be more like, usually if you will be detained on the protest rally, you will faced with fines like around 300 euros in average, and but it's also possible that you will be arrested till 30 days. And this winter we've seen these trends changed, that there are more and more administrative arrests. The share of administrative arrests rise. And then, of course, what is new is that for now it's not always detentions at the moment. Police is doing a lot of videos, and they do the face recognition and come to the houses, the apartments, and arresting people already there. And then they may face, some of them, not all, but many of them may face issues at job or at universities, etc., etc., etc. So yes, it's true. There are more and more risks if you want to participate in protests. Protest moment, it's very vulnerable. It depends on triggers, on emotional context, on different contexts. It's always like that. It's growing, it's declining, it's growing, it's declining. It's complicated. And with civil sites, it's easier. It's always growing. And for last 10 years, which I'm engaged in human rights field, I see that civil society in Russia is really growing and growing more stronger, both in its values and its infrastructure. There are more people who are sharing human rights values. We see it just by sociology polls, and we see it by our volunteers, by our private donors, which is more than 1,000 people who are donating OVD-Info. And it was unbelievable 10 years ago. It's something new. And we see this process that civil society is really growing despite all pressure. And for me, repression is vice versa. It's reaction of the state on this trend. And it means for me that civil society is so strong already that the state can't just ignore it. The state should do something if they want to stay in power. So my prognosis is quite positive in long run. In short run, it will be tougher and tougher. We launched a petition against this legislation in September, together with 235 others media outlets, NGOs, charities from different parts of country, and we just saying that the legislation should be cancelled, that it's bad for society and it's bad for civil sector, and to be honest, it's even bad for the state. Not for the power maybe, but for the state in itself, it's bad legislation. We are proud that 235 organizations and institutions also share this view with us, and around 200,000 people already signed it, and it works. It works first of all like media tool to spread the agenda, to talk about it within the society. It also works as a solidarity tool to say to foreign agents and especially to individuals, journalists, etc., that society is supporting you. And last but not the least, it is also quite useful on political level, since those lobbyists who are able to talk with Putin administration, with the State Duma, etc., they have this tool to say, look, society is against this legislation. Let's change it a little bit at least, yeah, to exclude individuals from this law enforcement practice, for example. And they are doing it, and the State Duma is already talking a lot about changing the legislation, as well as Putin mentioned it, etc. So it's quite strange, but even in Putin's Russia, such weak tool as a petition is still working. Any statement of solidarity are important on psychological level, at least, but it also provoke local actors to do something. Yeah, and local political actors may do a lot, since Russia is part of Europe in many ways, and it's still working like that. But local, Sweden actors, they are acting on your society. If Sweden society is asking to do something with it, they have no rights not to do it. And so, yeah, I think that it is important, and there are a lot of possibilities within international human rights framework, and a lot of possibilities in bilateral relationship between Sweden and Russia. You still can donate, especially to those organizations who are already labeled as a foreign agent. It's not prohibited. And I think that it's also very important to learn more about what's going on in Russia, since the level of expertise in European even professional circles is quite low. And when decision makers like governments, whatever, doing decisions, they're doing decisions based on very bad expertise. It's very black and white picture of what's going on in Russia. There is a bad Putin and good Navalny, yeah? And it's much more complicated. It's not only repression, it's also civil society which is growing. It's not only bad developments, but a lot of very good developments. And to do right decisions from which everybody will win in long run, you should really invest in analysis, in understanding what's going on in Russia and in post-Soviet space. And for now, it's more like, okay, we do understand everything's dictatorship, this is also dictatorship, this is also dictatorship, okay, let's forget about it. Let's think about something else, about local or national politics. No, it's not like that. It's complicated picture, and to do right decisions, you should really invest in academia and think tanks, in understanding the situation, in people-to-people communication, in many ways. There are many ways to understand the situation better, and I think that understanding is the basis for good policy. It's not only foreign agent legislation which is working against Russian civil society. It's also undesirable organizations when the state is labeling European NGOs as an enemy, and it's criminal even to communicate with these organizations. And they started to use it against Russian NGOs in exile too. Maybe not in exile, but those who are registered abroad.